Welcome to the Plan to Rise Above podcast powered by PMG Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. We believe that you should strive to get 1% better every day, where every dollar needs a home, and compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And with the Plan to Rise Above, you control your own destiny.
So what happened this weekend, George?
Enjoy the show.
Packers choked again. I think we had like a 95% chance to win, and
At
we blew
halftime
it.
or?
I think after the third, or when we scored that second touchdown, when Golden scored.
Yeah, when
And then
Golden
we
scored
missed
went
a
to
kick.
5%.
Yeah, 4.
That was?
6 minutes left. Great play.
Yeah. And then I saw and then they missed the field goal, and then our odds went up, and then we scored, odds went up.
We missed
scored
extra
again.
point too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
We missed
yeah.
2 field goals.
Yeah. So, but either way, so we're talking about the Bears-Packers playoff game, but you won't see this till the end of February. So,
Got to make some Super Bowl picks.
So obviously we do record these things a little bit ahead of time. And Bears by then will be in the Super Bowl.
Hopefully.
No, I'm not saying the Bears. I actually think probably the Rams are going to win.
Yeah, I think Rams win it. I would love a Rams-Bills Super Bowl. The Bills winning it all.
That'd be cool.
I feel like those fans deserve it, and he's got a chance with Mahomes out of the playoffs. Lamar Jackson's out.
Mm-hmm.
He can run it.
Yeah, I'd like to see McCaffrey get one too. So, or does he already have one?
No. The Niners have lost, I think, 2. They lost to the Chiefs and lost to the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. Keep choking.
Yeah, but it could be the Bears.
It will be. Hopefully.
They find a
Have
way to
faith.
That
win.
would be pretty
Have faith.
cool. It would be pretty cool.
All right, so what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about the risks that don't show up on your investment statements. So on your investment statements, you see the red or green numbers, how well you're accounted, but we're going to dig into the risks that actually matter for your plan. And we're going to make sure, or we're going to talk about the ones that you should be making sure that you're on top of today.
I should say that this is episode 7.
Oh, yeah.
And with your title, there's also 3 questions that every financial plan must answer. I think that we're going to go into that mixed into these various risks as well.
Yeah.
I think that sounds good.
I'd say, your investment statement, as Ryan says, it shows your performance, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. So we're going to go into some of those things that you might not see on that statement.
Yeah, I'm sure people get those statements and they're like huge packets and they're like, yeah, let me just see what we did this month or this time frame. So we're going to dig into a little bit more.
Yeah, and then some of those questions that we're going to talk about, why most people feel uncertain about their finances, their plan in general. Those questions are, number 1, am I on track? Number 2, what do I need to stop worrying about? And number 3, what could derail my plan if I ignore it?
So question 1, am I on track? False confidence live here? Is that what we have written down?
Yeah, so sometimes people think, like, if your account is up, you're on track. And like we said before, that's only one piece of the puzzle. The first thing you got to look at is the longevity risk. If there's a healthy couple, there's a 90% chance that one of them will live past 85. So you got to plan for the long term. If you retire at 60, 65, there's a very good chance you're going to need enough assets to live off for 30 years. So that's one of those things you got to answer. If you're going to retire and you want to know if you're on track, will your money be there when you're older and you're in retirement?
Yeah, and I just want to add something there that for me, that's a big one. I feel like a lot of people probably tend to believe they're not going to live that long and they don't want to plan for the upper 80s and the 90s. And I always like to joke in meetings of going, hey, I don't want to knock on the door and be like, hey, congratulations, you ran out of money at 82 and today happens to be moving day, right? So, the longevity risk to me is one that often folks tend to dismiss or downplay just because, one, I guess it's our own mortality, but people just don't think they're going to live that long, right?
I feel it happens all the time. People come in, they're like, I'm not living that long.
Yeah.
It's like all you
That was
guys.
always like, you're not allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's like, they're like, I'm lucky to go past 80. Well, now with advancements in healthcare, like there's a very good chance all of us will live that long. And then to throw on top of that, what we see a lot is with the assisted living, as you really get old, those costs can get extremely expensive. I mean, we're talking, at a minimum, $3,000-4,000 a month, as high as $10,000 to $15,000 that people are going to pay monthly for a home to live. And the last thing we want is, a client or a client's family member to say, hey, like, do we have money for this? And we didn't. And we want to say, yeah, we planned for this ahead of the time. You're taken care of. no need to worry. We don't want them saying, hey, where do I live? I have no money. I can't do anything now.
Yeah. And I did a trade this morning for required minimum distribution for a lady who is 100 years old. So there you go.
Yeah.
So longevity is a real thing, and maybe they can say drugs are getting good. Who knows? But yeah, that's either way. We are living longer than we'd like to think. So yeah, plan for the future.
Yeah, and we're kind of seeing like a smile shape with people spending. Like right when you're retiring, you want to go travel more, so you're spending more, and then once you're done traveling, you're kind of like coasting off, and then come like 80 or 78, the nursing home care costs knock on the door, and those creep right back up. So people aren't really planning for those too well. They're planning for the traveling part of retirement.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, the first 5 to 10 years and the last 5 to 10 years, it's where your spending is the highest. So you got to plan with it. Living longer is a gift. It only really becomes a financial problem if you don't end up planning for it.
Yeah.
Ryan, you want to take us into the next one?
Yeah, hidden risk number 2 for that first question is concentration risk. So like you've all heard the massive stories of like Amazon, Apple buying them when they're super low. I think George put this stat in. Like if his parents bought Amazon, what was it, 10,000?
The day I was born, if they put 10,000 into Amazon, it'd be worth 25 million today. Yeah, so I was like giving my dad a hard time, be like, hey, we could be much richer right now if we bought a little Amazon. But that's, back then Amazon was just a bookstore. No one knew it'd be what it is. Picking the next Amazon is like picking a needle in the haystack. I put a stat in here too. About 40% of stocks decline 70% and never recover that high. And about 2/3 of stocks underperform the index as a whole. So it's much easier to pick the next loser than it is to pick the next Amazon or NVIDIA or any stock of that nature.
It's like buying a lotto ticket.
Yeah, it's like it's playing the slots, buying a lotto, same thing. It's fun, but it's risky. And I guess the point we're trying to make, if you have a high concentration in your portfolio, it may have helped you get there, but it can take it away just as quick. So we want to make sure we're diversifying, we're spreading out those assets, we're not taking any unneeded risks in our financial plans.
Yeah, I guess one thing does come to mind for me, a little bit of history. Back after the tech wreck, let's call it early 2000s, I had a client that worked for Motorola when Motorola was on top. If you remember that Razor phone? That was like
that was sweet.
All the rage,
that was
right?
A cool phone.
Yeah, like, great phone, right? And I had a client that was top 5 in the company there and owned a ton of Motorola stock, as you can imagine. And we actually mentioned we wanted them to reduce that position by a ton. And of course, the client never wanted to. And that stock continued to, after the tech wreck, that stock fell and lost 80-90% of its value, whatever it was. And I do remember at the time going back to that client saying, hey, what did we, what's the story on that? Or was there ever any additional reason that maybe we missed? And it was purely greed, because there was a time in his head where, again, things were going so well, and he thought for just a little bit that stock could actually hit 20, 30 million, 40 million. And obviously it didn't work out that way, but he decided he didn't want to sell any of it, even though it was good advice, just because he's like, maybe I could have been somebody, so to speak. And again, just works out to be a normal person. But yeah, I mean, everybody can get greedy, even when, again, at the time, like things look like all signs are pointing up. And in that situation, Motorola is pretty much nothing today compared to what it used to be. So yeah.
Well, I love the quote too. And it's like history doesn't always repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Mm-hmm. And even today, we're seeing some similar trends with, AI, some of the tech stocks. And we saw that, like you said, happen back in 2008, back in 2000. And we just want to make sure people are proactive and making changes before it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to protect your wealth.
Yeah. So question number 2 is, what do you need to stop worrying about? A lot of people have financial anxiety from being uncertain about their plan. What are some of those things that you may not be thinking of that you should account for in your plan?
Ooh, and I see the hidden risk.
The first one, like the leaking faucet, inflation risk.
That's been in the news a lot lately.
Yeah.
I feel like people should be pretty comfortable with this one now, right?
I feel like pre-2019, no one talked about it. Mm-hmm. And then COVID happened, and it's all we ever talk about. I think it was 2022, we had 8% inflation. And everyone's like, hey, my grocery bill is higher, my insurance premiums are higher, gas, everything. So that was like a rude awakening for a lot of people. Like, hey, I really got to plan for this inflation, because if my assets aren't growing, your purchasing power is going down. So yeah, the inflation is definitely a hidden risk to all portfolios. You got to plan for it and make changes, make sure you're invested so you can outpace inflation.
You want to work through the math on that, Ryan?
So let's take a 10% return, and with 2% inflation, you're really looking at an 8% real return, and that could compound quietly over decades and just make your purchasing power go down and down and down. And you want to be battling inflation with your accounts. You don't want to be staying even with it. You want to be aggressively beating it, because then you're just losing purchasing power. Like, look at a savings account or a high yield savings account. If your return's 3.5% to 4% and inflation is 2%, you're really at 1.5%, and banks are just beating you then, and inflation's eating everything.
I think too, like a real life example, if you retire today and you need $10,000 a month, there's a good chance that by the end of your retirement, that need is going to be $20,000 a month, right? Because over time, with inflation being 2-3%, the cost of living is going to double. So that's something that you need to account for in your plan. Your spending need is going to change every year, and it's going to go higher throughout your retirement.
What pops in my head, and I don't want to beat this one into the ground too much, but in the last episode, I think it was episode 6, we talked a little bit about the K-shaped recovery, and basically more of just the having assets or not having assets. So when I think of inflation, I naturally think of just like, you got to have assets, So you got to have assets to keep up with inflation, to outpace inflation. You can't just be stuck on wages only. And so again, I don't want to bring that up again, but I did. And that's what we have on inflation.
Was that a hard conversation with clients? Like, especially when, there was a few years after the crisis where inflation was 0%, and they're like, I don't have to worry about it. Like, things are getting cheaper. Like,
no, I think people always knew, like they knew enough of, like, I've heard that term. They're like, I know it exists, but yes, people would minimize the crap out of it and just go, that's not a real risk, or this is just a finance guy telling a story, or so probably yes, they probably minimize that argument to a degree, but I wouldn't say it was still there. It was still brought up. It was still discussed. But how much weight did it carry in a meeting? Probably much smaller than it does today.
Yeah, because I feel like now everyone is on page. They're like, inflation's a lot, things are more expensive. But I feel like there was a point in time where it wasn't like a major concern to people.
Correct. But I would also argue too that not just the inflation piece, but people's overall understanding of markets and investments and planning are higher today than they were even 10 years ago. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like because of social media and whatnot, people are more aware of what's going on than what they used to be. So all these arguments just kind of have a little bit more weight today than they did 10 years ago.
Yeah. And has it always felt that way, that things are getting more expensive? Like, has there ever been a period in your career where you felt like things were kind of level and steady? I just feel like everyone says that year after year, and it's like, well,
from 2002 to 2005, obviously housing was getting very expensive. But then I remember from 2007 to 2011, like, housing was getting cheaper. So that was kind of a weird time, right? Where, you would just watch things and you watch your home value just keep dropping. But then you'd see, hear stories of people like, hey, I want to go buy this townhouse. I want to go move and live over here. And they would tell you the price. And you're like, oh, you got a great deal. And everybody's like, yeah, I got an amazing deal. So, there was a little bit of a period of time where inflation was going the other way and deflation, let's say, with housing. And people were like, man, I just like robbed the cradle, so to speak. Like, this is amazing, right? So there was that, but that was maybe like 4 years. So, yeah. And now everything's the other way. So,
yeah. We
Except
had that
for
in
TVs.
Yeah, TVs got cheaper.
TVs.
Yeah.
Yeah, TVs, but everybody figures out a way to say, well, yeah, the $3,000 TV is now $300, but the new technology, I'm gonna settle for the $2,000 TV. Right? I don't see too many people
the
buying
QLED or the
whatever.
OLED.
Those are nice.
I don't see too many people buying the $200 TV today.
I think my theory is, like, Netflix or Amazon Prime, they're gonna start giving away TVs, but you're gonna have to subscribe. So that's gonna be your thing. Here's a cheap $100 TV. But you got to pay us $15 a month or as long as you have the TV to use it.
Interesting. Okay.
It's kind of like that one. What's the Roku?
Yeah, Roku.
They
give you like
TVs
a Roku TV.
and then it's like,
Yeah. Well, now you got to have like 10 different subscriptions. Like, You try, like, I was watching the game this weekend. It was on Prime.
Prime.
And like it's every weekend it's Prime and the NBC
Netflix.
one. Yeah, it's always changing on us.
Yeah. So okay. So hold on. So just as a recap, right? So back on track. Just as a recap, talking about your financial statement, things that don't show up there, right? So inflation is one of those things that does not show up there. So just make sure you pay attention to that and plan for it. And as George pointed out, over the course of retirement, plan on your expenses doubling, right? So there's that. What is the next hidden risk not showing up on a statement?
The next would be tax risk. Your investment statement often shows pre-tax balances. You live life on after-tax dollars, right? So if you have $1 million in an IRA, after taxes that might only net you 700 or less. So it's something you got to plan for taxes. How are you making those withdrawals? I mean, we're always, every year we have the RMDs for clients, and we got to make sure we don't want to take too much in a year because it might push you from the 12% bracket to the 22% bracket. So there's things you can do ahead of time to start managing some of those risks and make sure you're not paying too much in taxes. I don't know if, Ryan, if you want to touch on that, like different opportunities on things that people can do to help reduce some of those taxes.
Yeah, you could start doing Roth and backdoor strategies. You could start contributing to a Roth side of your 401k to lessen that RMD bill come 73 or whenever that age is when it changes. And also legislation laws and tax laws can change all the time. That's like the wild card there. It can throw a huge wrench in your plan if you're not planning actively and looking at all these different things and listening to a tax advisor or wealth advisor who kind of sit down and are up to date on most of these rules.
Yeah, and what would you say, like, if you're meeting with a young client, why do you think they should go towards the Roth 401k versus the traditional?
I think the Roth 401k is very powerful because you're lessening that RMD bill come tax or come RMD time, but you don't really need that full deduction yet to deduct the $23,000 yet.
Mm-hmm.
So take advantage of that after tax lifestyle. And I'd always like this: $1 million in a traditional 401k is not the same amount in a Roth 401k.
Yeah,
It's
and then
two
also
completely.
the tax brackets, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, like just at a younger age, you might be at the lowest point of your earnings in your career, so you might be in a lower tax bracket. Where one day you start making more, maybe you own a business, you might be as high as 30+% in taxes. I think the highest is 37, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And I just like the idea of building that tax-free piggy bank, right? It's and I visually think of this big old fat piggy bank, old school pig, kind of thing going, I can just take whatever I want out of there and the IRS doesn't care. So that's the piece I like about it. So
that is true.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, you're the most flexible. There's no restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
I've had clients before like, I need money. It's like, well, you can take from this account, 10,000 clean, hit your bank account, or you can take from this one. It's 10,000, but really you're netting, 7,000. So it just makes things easier, and that way too. Maybe you dip into both. One day we're managing your tax bracket, right? We want to stay under the 12% bracket, so we're taking a little bit from the IRA, but then a little bit from the Roth. So that's why it's good having that bucket built up.
Yep.
Hey, you don't want to be paying more to Uncle Sam.
Yeah, I think that's one thing everyone can agree on: pay less in taxes. That's something that everyone is happy about. I think last episode we went into more of the different ideas. I mean, even we didn't talk about, but like deferred comp is another thing you can do. Mm-hmm. Residency planning, like living in a state with no income tax is something that a lot of high net worth people look at. So it just depends on your situation and what you got going on.
Yeah, and that's a good one that people probably need to look at that one a little harder. Is the state that you live in and where you are, right? Because there's a lot of money that can be saved by living in various states for sure. So
and there's two arguments to that, because we see a lot with California now. Mm-hmm. People leaving the state because the taxes are crazy. But I hope, like, if I ever have like tons of money, like I hope I can live where I want and not let taxes decide my life. Like that's the thing too. Like I've seen people do everything they can to pay less in taxes. Like if you're worth $100 million plus, like I don't know. At that point, like it is
it doesn't
nice
matter.
having,
Yeah.
it's nice having more money, but it's like at the same time, like I want to be by, my parents or my grandkids, whatever it is.
Even if
like,
you're worth $5 million, it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah, so it's
where you
like-
live, but yeah.
yeah. So sometimes we want to optimize to a point, but not to a point where it's like, all right, you only get to see your kids twice a year now. Like we want to, it's all about balance in life.
Yeah.
Correct. And then I'm going to take this next one. Question 3. What could derail my plan? And we've got a couple risks, again, not showing up on the statement. What are some of those risks not showing up on a statement that could derail your plan potentially?
Yeah, what your statement doesn't show is how market returns can vary year to year, right? The past, I think last year we were up, 10+% year before. But there's years like 2018, right, where the market is down for the year, or 2022 where the market's down. And those were really minor compared to what we saw in, 08 and 2000. And so a hidden risk would be sequence of returns risk. So that means, let's say you retired in early 2000, right? And you were unlucky, you retired at the market top. Mm-hmm. Then you had the dot-com burst, you had 9/11. That would be a period where your sequence of returns are very low, and that's going to hurt your overall plan if you're taking money out at those low points. So I don't know. There's different things you can do to prepare for that, to make sure you're not selling at a low point. I know one of the things we do here is we sell intentionally. Like we don't just blanket sell across someone's portfolio. We're looking at individual positions and saying, hey, maybe we're selling this bond position because the market's down and we don't want to sell the stocks at a loss. Or on the flip side, like if someone called in today with the market near all-time highs, we're selling some of the stock side and, maybe cashing in some of those big gains.
I kind of have a question. Like, what would you say is the biggest derailment possible? Like, a job loss could happen, like, other than, like, a stock market. Like, what could derail a plan? Like,
Well,
you've
of course,
seen.
well, health is probably the biggest one, right? Health is,
Healthcare costs? Or?
Yeah, healthcare costs. But I mean, a health emergency obviously is going to be the biggest one that nobody can see coming.
Yeah.
Loss of a job is right there. But that's where we go back to, how can you protect against how can you protect against the sequence of return risk? Would be having an emergency fund, having 6 months of expenses set aside. I mean, it's not going to get you all the way. If you have a major health issue, it's not going to, after 6 months, you're out of emergency fund, and then you're left to battle the market like everybody else is. But at least it gives you a little bit of a buffer, right? And so that's where those things kind of come in. And then long term, if we're talking about not dealing with any major crisis, then I would say, yeah, if you're retiring, you have a 30-year window, and you don't know what the next 30 years is going to bring, that's where diversification comes in. That's where maybe various buckets of what levers can you pull. Maybe I pull from a Roth account. Maybe this year I pull from my tax-deferred account. That's why we have the bridge or the non-retirement account, right? So, I mean, that's why we do all these planning ahead of time, so we have options and various buckets to pull from while you're in there. And then, of course, there's different investment vehicles, which we can get into another time as well. But yeah, I mean, you have to be able to, you just don't know what's going, around the corner, so to speak. You don't know what's coming your way. So
at the end of the day, you just need some sort of buffer to get you through those periods. Emergency fund, owning more conservative positions as part of the portfolio. Something that can outlast whatever that concern is, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
But I would also add, and I know we don't have it written down here actually, is you have to be also somewhat comfortable with risk when you're dealing with 30 years of retirement, right? Kind of, you have to be a little trusting of the system. Maybe, you have to be comfortable with those ups and downs. The market moves 10%, every year up or down. The average is actually more like 16%. We talk about, once every 3 years, you're going to have a 20% pullback. That's all part of the stock market and part of the game, but also part of that longevity if you want to be successful. And so you have to be comfortable with that too. So, I mean, even the, that's not showing up on your statement anywhere, obviously.
So I guess that'd be more like the behavioral aspect of it, how you respond to those different declines. And I think you talk about it a lot in meetings. It's like, all of a sudden you have a nest egg of, let's say 10 million, right? At 10% of 10 million, it would be $1 million swing. So it's like getting used to those larger swings in the account, good and bad, as you go through retirement.
Correct. Yeah. And then we also, I like to reinforce the idea too that even if you had a $1 million, right? Let's keep it a little bit of a lower number on purpose for this. So a 20% pullback, which will happen every 3 years, is 200,000. Well, that 200,000 is more money than most Americans make working 40 hours a week,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
So again, if you've saved $1 million, at some point in time, you can expect and just bank on it that your account is going to fluctuate more than you worked, or more than you did, earning and working, showing up 40 hours a week to some job. So, so pat yourself on the back for that because you actually have built up a big enough nest egg. And obviously, we want more than $1 million, so we want 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5 million. Then those swings are even more dramatic, but you got to be comfortable with that.
Yeah. So would you say then if we have a client that's coming in, they're 2 years out from retirement, what are steps they could take in that moment to, kind of help prevent some of these things happening and just better their financial plan?
Well, obviously, one, have a plan.
Yep.
First, get a plan. Looking at
Plan to rise above. Yeah, John's back here.
Plan to rise above. Yep. And get a plan. Double checking your expenses. That's probably the biggest piece for a lot of people. Know what it takes to live within your means. Obviously, then, do we have an emergency fund? Where's our savings? Are you dipping into your savings? What are your normal patterns? Where's the next 2-3 years of income coming from? And then we can build on that and get into more of the diversification type factors. But I think it starts there. But you got to, plan to rise above. Better go get a plan.
Yeah. And plan where your income is coming from in retirement. That's a big thing. It's like, where's that new paycheck coming from? You're not getting paid every 2 weeks anymore. Ideally, we want to replicate that somewhere.
Yeah, and you want to stress test your plan too. Like what we've been doing a lot is running those Monte Carlo simulations just to see like what happens in the bottom percent or the top percent.
Yeah, and I like toggling the different scenarios, saying, hey, what if? I think we had a client recently who was looking at a boat. Like, what if you buy a $100,000 boat? Like, how does that change the different your odds of success, right? We want to be having, 80%, 90% odds of success no matter what happens. It could be another 08, doesn't matter. Like, we want to make sure those plans are strong.
Yeah, and then we haven't had, the other day, we had somebody walk in, remember when I was going to lunch, and after we were talking, they want to retire in 2 years, and I'm like, hey, we need your Social Security statements, and they don't even know what their Social Security numbers are yet. So that's a basic one, right? I'm like, hey, you're 2 years from retirement, we need your Social Security statements. So let's, I asked the question of like, have you looked those up? And they're like, what are you talking about?
That's a huge piece of their income for retirement. I always like to use the term, like, we're a doctor. We can only help you as well as you tell us the information you got going on. Like, we can't make up these numbers for you, but we can help give you a good idea. But we want to be as accurate as possible. And that starts with, having your Social Security numbers, knowing what debt you have, assets, 401ks, et cetera. You got to know those numbers cold, especially before retirement.
So we're talking about statements and what type of risks are not showing up on a statement.
We got estate and beneficiary risk. So this one's more about like wills, trusts, beneficiaries, TODs, PODs, like all the above. You want to make sure in those, come retirement, you want to make sure though that those are all set out, because you could have a 401k and have those TODs placed on them when you started that job, and that could be 20 years ago, and things change. Life comes at you quick, and you got to make sure that it's not about the money. It's about the stress about making sure that you have those plans in place.
Yeah, and it's minor things too. Like I've also seen people not updating when they have a second kid, right? It's only one kid. So it's like, oh, Johnny's getting 100% and Sam's getting nothing. It's like you want to make it 50-50. And then when you have the next kid, then it's a third. And that's where something like a trust comes in hand, because if you have all your accounts tagged at trust, you only have to update your beneficiaries in one place. Yeah. And then updates across the board. So that's one of those things that's definitely nice to have. If not, PODs and TODs, like Ryan said, those avoid probate. So those are at a minimum, you need to have those on the accounts.
What does that stand for again?
Payable on death and transfer on death.
Thank you.
So sorry for the acronyms, but so that's what those mean. You need them. It's an easy form, takes 2 minutes to sign. That's something during our annual reviews, we're always double checking, saying, hey, is this who you want as your beneficiaries, and keeping them up to date. And Ryan said, like, life changes too. If you get a divorce, right, you need to update all those different numbers, and make sure they're who you want them to be.
Yeah. Probate is expensive and slow, so you don't want to be tied up there when you're trying to grieve or trying to just plan for the next day, but a single day of planning can really save a lot of headaches. And
Yeah, probably. I mean, it can take 6 months plus.
Yeah.
I mean, it take forever, and it costs thousands in fees. You got to have it turned. You got to have people represent you to get the assets that should be yours to you. So yeah, just take action today, so you save yourself from headache later on.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add another one again, not written on here. Is just you should look at those beneficiaries, anyways, right? I mean, obviously divorce happens and remarriages happen, and sometimes it's easy to leave your own kids out of your own lineage, so to speak. If you end up getting remarried and then you make your new spouse, and then that new spouse had their own kids, and before you know it, your kids are not listed as beneficiaries because that money then automatically just pivoted to the other side to the new spouse, and the new spouse is like, hey, that spouse is gone, and I'm going to leave the money to my kids, and what happened to the original kids, right? So
Yeah.
it's a so there's a lot of little things like that. So I would say just annually, that's something that we like to look at. But again, if you're doing this on your own, that's something you should be looking at.
Yeah.
You don't want to just accidentally leave your own kids out of your own will or your own situation because you forgot to update a form. So
Yeah, one more thing to add: call your grandma, your grandpa. I've seen it so many times where grandma's like, I don't hear from Johnny anymore. Like, I'm switching my beneficiary.
Oh,
So
yeah.
make sure you're going to visit, having lunch, not because the money aspect, but their grandparents love you. They want to see you. They obviously probably don't have as much going on as you do at that point in your life, but, make an effort to go see them. They won't be there forever. And, hopefully they don't take you out of as their beneficiary too.
And don't think that they won't, because we've seen it.
Yeah.
100%.
It happens, and grandma can get a little vindictive at times.
Yeah.
Man. It happens, man.
It's such an awkward phone call for us too, because we can't discuss to you until after they pass, and they call up and they're like, hey, yeah, so half of this is mine, and it's like, well, actually it's not, you weren't as a beneficiary, or your share's smaller than maybe some of your siblings, and then we're the middleman essentially, and we're like, hey, we didn't this is not something we choose, it's for the client.
Yeah, and by the way, when we say grandma, it's not even that grandma is leaving out grandkids. That grandma's leaving out her kids.
Yeah.
So it's not even the grandkids that are being left out. It's you better just call your mom or dad, because they're leaving you out. So yeah, it's it does unfortunately happen more common than you think. So
Yeah. And sometimes too, there's legitimate reasons. If a child can't be trusted with that money, parents do have different things set up to try to avoid that. So sometimes it's real, and you just want to make sure you have those discussions beforehand with your parents or grandparents, and that way there's no surprises.
What do you have in closing? Anything?
Yeah, I would just say your investment statement, it doesn't show the full picture, right? There's a lot more to it than just market is up or market is down. There's the biggest risk that we talked about is longevity, concentration, inflation, taxes, planning gaps. So there's a lot more to investment or to wealth management than just investment management. Anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, I mean, obviously your statement is pretty much in line with much more in line with the investment management side of finances, right? Which is one component of financial planning. So just remember that for us, or for people working with advisors, most likely you might even have in your portal, you might be able to see your investment statements for those of you who use online online stuff. But we can also show you your financial plan to rise above, mentioned above there. We can also show the planning stuff to you online as well. So look at some of those other things, some of those other tools that paints that big picture, not just the statement, which is really, again, investment management only. So.
Yeah, and when people meet with us, we want to make sure they feel comfortable answering those questions. And the ones we talked about is, am I on track? You want to say, hey, yes, I'm on track, or no, these are the changes I got to make going forward. 2, what do I need to stop worrying about? What are things that we're tracking behind the scenes as a team to make sure that you don't have to worry about that, whether it be inflation, longevity risks, all the above. And then number 3, what are those things that could derail it, right? We want to make sure we're thinking ahead of time so we can plan before it happens versus being reactive. So end of the day, those 3 questions, you should feel comfortable working with us that you have an answer to them.
One thing in closing, I'm going to bring it up again. We started with some of our Bears picks or football picks. You're going to see us about 6 weeks later than when we film this. So who's your final pick
All right,
for
I'm
the Super Bowl?
going I'm going Bills. I would love to see Josh Allen and the Bills fan base finally get a ring. And then I'm going to say they're going to play. I'm going to go Niners. I know they're huge underdogs this weekend, but I just feel like they've been finding a way to win. And so I'd like to see Bills Niners. We'll go final score. Bills 31.
Final score.
Damn.
31. Rams 14. Or no, sorry. Not Rams. 49ers 14.
All right.
There we go. Blowout.
I'm going to go bear down. Bears, Steelers.
Bears, Steelers.
Rodgers.
Bears? I don't want to say it. That's
Steelers
not,
win that,
I'm
right?
like trying to think of
You don't need a score. Don't worry
That's
about the score.
Okay. 35-20.
Okay, 35-20. And I'm
Bears winning?
Yeah.
All right.
I would like to see the 49ers, obviously the Bears, but I do feel like the Bears need a little more maturing. So I like the story of the Niners being there and losing, so I feel like they're kind of due. But for whatever reason, Puka is just too strong right now. So I'm going to go with the Rams, and I'm going to go with I think maybe Denver holds on somehow and surprises everybody out of the AFC. So,
Yeah.
but I'm going to say Stafford and the Rams somehow get it done, and if not, it's Bears. So yeah. So we're going to find out next time. We'll see how
Yeah,
we'll
see
get
how
to talk
we
about it. We'll get to
matched
see
up.
how we actually did this. So this is not for any of the shorts, by the way, John. This is just for us and the people listening to the full hour podcast or whatever this length is. And yeah, so thank you for listening to episode 7. Again, plan to rise above. Check us out on the website as well, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and all those good things. Follow, etc. We've been getting good feedback, so thank you for that. And anything you guys want to add in closing?
No, plan to rise above.
Bear down.
Bear down. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.